Welcome back for more scary stories. Before we begin, I just want to share quickly that I got some channel updates. I joined a podcast team called AFMG Podcast Network. It's an amazing group of podcasters and storytellers. At the moment, there are a total of 3 podcast stations, including myself. We have Lore Dome, hosted by Honey Sweet. She gives us detailed lore and backstory of video games and movies. We also have Stabby Time, with your hosts Brendan and Liz, as they talk about classic slasher movies and deep insiders of the main killers. Then you have me, Silver Underworld, as I read your scary stories and share them to the world. If you want to post your scary stories, I'll share a link down below for you to fill out a form. Remember, it must be a true and detailed story. We have a Patreon page. If you want to help me in any way, visit the link down below and check out the list we have. It's free to just look. If you want to subscribe, you'll get live question and answers, behind the scenes content, early access, exclusive voting power, Patreon shout out, and a free t-shirt after 3 months of subscribing. Thank you for your time. Let's begin the scary story. When was the last time you went to a graveyard? A long time ago? Recently? Well, imagine a teenager walking through a graveyard at nighttime during the 90s. You think she found something supernatural? This story was submitted by Liz. You can find her Instagram, all one word, Attack from Mars Games, and Twitch on AFMG. Let's begin. Back into high school in the 90s, I was an artsy goth kid. Photography was a cool class to take back then. We were able to hang out in the dark room all class. As a goth kid, I would check out haunted sites, and most of them were graveyards. I was respectful when I go to take photos. Most of my family is buried at the Resurrection Cemetery, which is a famously haunted graveyard located in Illinois. So, I knew how it feels when people are disrespectful when visiting places like that. My first incident was when I took photos just next door to my parents' house. My family lives in an average middle-class subdivision, but on the outside, with the subdivision wrapped around, is an old graveyard. As a photography project, I took one of my friends there to do a photo shoot. We did a few by the gates because they were broken, so it looked like a cool spot to shoot. As it got darker, I wanted to use the film what I had left so I can go develop it in class the next day. We ran into a headstone that has been knocked down and it's cracked. It looked like it's been knocked down for a while since the headstone was sunk into the ground. So far, it looked like it was part of the sidewalk. I went to take some photos, but my light wasn't working. Everything else was working fine. So I tried 2 more times and no light. There were no street lights because the cemetery was built on a hill covering any light from the houses around it. I assumed my last 2 photos were just going to be black. At that point, my friend and I called it a night. I get to class the next day, ready to develop my photo shoot. My friend and I were talking about what we did in our shoot. I told him about my light breaking, and the last 3 photos were probably pitch black. Our project was to use the whole roll. I was sure my teacher was going to take points off for the missing photos. We all started to process the negatives. Class was starting to end, and I finished early. I went to take a look at my negatives, and there was something in the 3 photos that I took with no light. My friend said they will help develop all 3 in time, so we can take a better look. One by one, we revealed a perfect yet tiny bit non-focused photo of the gravestone. The photos looked like someone had shone a flashlight in the middle of the gravestone. The first photo had 3 orbs with trails from the grass to the sky. The second photo had only 2 orbs, and the last one only had 1 orb. We stood there creeped out. This was next to my home. I never went back since. You would think I learned my lesson in the graveyards. Not me. I decided to do a video and photo shoot over the Bachelor Grove Cemetery. It is another famously haunted place. I lived in the middle of a lot of haunted places. I started collecting all my equipment and made sure our batteries were charged and that we had backup. Because in the 90s, it did not last long. The place that we filmed was the path walking to the graveyard. Then I would take these photos inside. Everything was packed and ready to go. So we drove in the park preserved across the street from the path leading to the graveyard. You could not trespass, so we had to go fast and get across. I grabbed everything we could across the street. Everything was clear. I get out my video camera and start to film over the hauntings and lores of the graveyard. The closer we got to the graveyard, the lower my battery gets. It's a 2-minute walk to the main gates. We get to the gates and my camera turns off. I go replace the battery and nothing's happening. I figure it was fine. I have the footage from before this moment. I can use that. I take out my camera now. Someone had hung a bunch of doll heads all over the trees. The graveyard was known for people going in and desecrating the graves. I go and take a few photos and everything looks great. Until I took a photo of the infant daughter grave. My camera just jammed. As soon as I pressed down, it felt like someone slapped the camera towards my face. After that, my camera didn't work. I go the next day to take it to the camera store to get the film developed and camera fixed. I get to the store and the guy asked me where I went with the camera, and I asked why. He told me that the mirror was so jammed that it broke and jammed more. It destroyed any photos it had because it was exposed to anything that's light. I told the store dude where I went and what happened. Because before I went to the camera store, my friend and I checked the film footage to find nothing. Just gray screen. You can hear us, but all you saw was gray. The store dude just stood there laughing and telling me I was lying. I didn't care if he didn't believe me, because the one thing I did know was I'm not going back there again. Thank you for watching. If you or your friend have a scary story, please submit them at the link below. It will take you to a web page, and there you can type or copy and paste a story. After your submission, give us a few days to work on them. Thank you. Good night. Farewell. And don't get lost in the dark.